Hello and welcome to William Hill's Inside Track as we gear up for another very big weekend and potentially a weekend that sets up a huge payout at Aintree in the coming weeks as the Will Hill $500,000 is on the table for anyone who wins at Haydock and goes on to score at Aintree. But we'll get to that in a second or two. First, let's introduce the panel. My name's Ross Brierley and I'm joined by two sharp minds indeed. One man who's an expert in the saddle and now looks at the races from afar, and one man who I would imagine has never ridden a horse in his life, or certainly not to any demonstrable effect. Let's start off with the latter, Andy Holding.
How are we doing, pal? Yeah, I'm good. I've probably watched more races than anyone, but I've never actually sat on the back of a horse, so Barry's going very much the expert in that department.
And of course, Barry Geraghty, who sat on the back of how many? What's your estimate, Barry? Individual horses on a race course?
Races, probably I'm averaging maybe 400 or 500 a year for 24 years, so 10 or 12,000. I'm guessing. Would my maths be right?
I even if your maths aren't right, Barry, it's still a very big number, isn't it? How are you feeling about the weekend, the National Hunt season? Obviously gearing up. The weather is relentless. And, we're going to be testing the stamina of not only high-profile horses like John Bond at Ascot, but also the stayers are going to really have to stay, Barry. It's going to be a big weekend.
Absolutely. We're really ramping up, getting closer and closer to the festivals. And you're shaping up, obviously, for the Grand National with the William Hill $500,000, but obviously all the Cheltenham showpiece races as well. So no, it's really hotting up. Conditions aren't ideal, and especially when you're looking at this time of year, getting close to the festival, ideally you don't want a horse having a tough race this close to the festival.
We were talking about this yesterday, Andy, but The thing is, every trial now is going to be run on really deep ground. So at the very least, the playing field is level for everyone who comes up to the spring festivals, because it's been soft or heavy ground for weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands, we've got three main meetings now, haven't we? We've had the DRF, we've had the Cheltenham trials, we had Newby last week. We've got this weekend Haydock, Wincanton, Ascot. Not necessarily chock full of Cheltenham horses. They're trials, in inverted commas, but let's face it, I think a lot of the connections will be going gung-ho to win them. The likes of, Thomas Moore and Alexi, these are big pots to have, grade twos, etc. They'll deal with Cheltenham afterwards. But then we've got Kelso, and of course we've got Kempton. And then the final piece of the jigsaw will be put in place. So yeah, you're just looking for horses this weekend who not necessarily are going to have Cheltenham as their main targets, whereas previous weeks you just got that at the back of your mind. Are they going to be all guns blazing like Yellow Lambers of this world? So I think from a betting perspective this weekend, you've probably got a little bit more confidence that, the green light is go rather than, let's think about 3 or 4 weeks down the line.
All right, well, green light for go then over at Haydock with the William Hill $500,000 Grand National trial. Of course, the Will Hill $500,000 is a fantastic offer for any connections who win a designated trial and then take the big one at Aintree. William Hill will present them with a huge cheque for £500,000. Now, there were supposed to be 3 of those trials, but the weather's abandoned one. Twig is the one name on the roll call for Ben Pauling. We'll see who gets their name on the roll call and potentially sets themselves up for a right big payout at Aintree this weekend. Deafening silence for the Skeltons is likely to be popular. Maya Town has been on the tongs of plenty of punters, but we've waited weeks seemingly to see him on the race course. And then you've got the likes of your git makers, the Snowdons, and Gavin Sheehan. He's a very strong stayer. Monbeg Genius, Richmond Lake, of course, Grand National in the Hemmings Silks. They are connected through plenty of runners, Barry. But yeah, this is going to be 3.5 miles in heavy ground round Haydock. Who's going to relish this test?
I'm really sticking with Meyertown. I don't think we saw him at his best the last time Haydock. He obviously went there on the back of a fall, and I think they went a controlled pace. Obviously they were good to soft ground as well, so it wasn't as testing as he maybe would have needed. And I just felt he got caught in a sprint, and he made that mistake in the straight as a result of jumping from third gear to fifth gear. I think they'll ride him. Not that they need to ride him massively more aggressively on the slower ground over 3.5 miles, but I would imagine they'll go more of a consistent pace with him, which I think will play to his strengths. And no, I think I'm very sweet with Marathon here. I mentioned before, I thought he was maybe potentially the best handicapped horse in England, or even we'll say Britain, considering his training in Scotland. But I think he could still be. So I'm holding faith with him again.
Yeah, you don't want to be you don't want to be winding the Scottish trainers up, Barry, and you don't want to get on the wrong side of them. That's for sure. Just from a riding perspective, you've got 3.5 miles. It's heavy ground. You know, what's the most important thing about getting your horse into the best rhythm so that they have gas in the tank at the finish?
Yeah, well, he jumped well through the race the last day in Haydock, obviously on the back of that fall in Newbury. So the slower ground is just going to make it a slower motion event. So you won't need to get into top gear as early. It'll happen itself because it'll just become attritional. So no, they'll just school away, keep a nice consistent rhythm going. You know, you don't have to look for anything big. You just get your horse measuring his fences and he'll find his own rhythm himself because it is harder work to jump out of that heavier ground. So they'll be happy just to pop away and, you know, just keep a consistent pace. But the emphasis are going to naturally be on stamina, so I think that's going to suit him.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Lucinda Russell, knows how to train a staying chaser for sure, Andy. Albeit the yard could do with, they could do with a good day, couldn't they?
Yeah, couldn't they just? That would be the only thing that would be at the back of my mind to put me off my town. I think there's some value to be had in this race because if you dissect it, there's quite a few horses that come here off the back of if he runs. Granges for another one. He comes from also a stable that's just going through a little bit of a quiet period. Jeep Maker, Git Maker, the blinkers are going to have to work with him because, he needed a rocket up his backside having watched him last time out at Chepstow. He just did not engage whatsoever, and he's that kind of horse. And you can't get out of touch at Haydock. You've got to stay on with the speed. It's very much a front runner track, a track that suits horses on the speed, on the pace. So I'm probably looking at these prices, Ross, and looking towards Holkia, who has got an amazingly consistent profile. He's really lucky not to win last time out at Windsor. He did everything right. He was always in the van or in the first 2 or 3. So I think that's how he'll be ridden on Saturday. And he just got nutted by Leon King, who came from out the clouds to come and do him. But he ran well beyond Zerk the time before. That race has worked out well, as we know. I think the 4th and 5th have both won subsequently. It was a strong time figure. So I do think he's off a fairly lightweight, rather overlooked. And I don't think we could rule Richmond Lake out of calculations. He's another one that absolutely does Haydock. Obviously, connections synonymous with races like this. He ran really well here last time out, chased down a horse who stayed well. But he's another one I think he's slightly overlooked. So if I was going to have 2 against the field, it'd be Hollokia and Richmond Lake, with slight preference at the prices for Hollokia.
All right, Hollokia then, yeah, 7 years old as well, Andy. So, he's got plenty of experience for essentially a horse only just reaching his peak. So, okay, Hollokia for Andy, and Maya Town for you then, Barry.
I'm going to stick with Marathon, yeah. But they've had a couple of horses fill the runner-up spot in the last week or so. So they're not all running desperately, I think, Lucinda's. Yeah.
Also, just a quick one, Barry, as well. I think there's a possibility that they've maybe taken a leaf out of the big yards books. If they think they can compete at Cheltenham, at Aintree, at Ayr, you don't want to be running all your best horses to the best of their ability in January and February?
You could say that, and you could make a case if you like, but that's making a case. I suppose only Lucinda and Michael and Peter know that for sure. But you can. It's one way of looking at it. But some horses are running well, so it's not, and actually running well at reasonable prices too. So not horses getting turned over at short odds maybe so much.
Yeah. Okay. And again, who will put themselves in the position to potentially take home that $500,000 bonus. That's at Haydock. Over at Ascot, we've got Grade 1 action in the shape of the Ascot Chase. And finally, we get to see John Bonn properly tested over a trip. A horse who it's impossible not to fall in love with. Even when he does things wrong, he still doesn't seem to do that much wrong. He gets himself into second, even when he looks like he's going to get beat 30 lengths into third. He's a remarkable horse. He's 10 years old, and he's going to be a short price favourite for the Ascot Chase, Andy. But he's going to come up against a proper course specialist in Pic D'Orhy, a fan favourite in the shape of Edward Stone as well, who bounced back to form last time out. So, yeah, very much one for age and experience rather than youth and potential in the Ascot Chase. But what a trio we've got going head to head.
Yeah, for fear of having a clip round the ear from my mum, who's the number one fully paid up member of the John Bond fan club. I can't really say anything derogatory about him. She'll go, "Oh, you can't say that about John Bond." I mean, she absolutely loves him. So much to the point where that I'm sure the next door neighbours are wondering what the earth is going on next door when John Bonnie's running. She's making that much noise. So you can imagine what she was like last time out. She was in total raptures when John Bond came back off the canvas to beat Thistle Ask. It was just a brilliant performance. And it just shows you how tough he is. As soon as you write him off, he bounces back, wins in adversity. And you write these old horses off at your peril. A lot of people have written so many columns and inches about John Bond. Oh, he should be doing this, should be doing that, should be running over 2.5 miles. What are you doing running him over 2 miles? And he just keeps answering the critics in the best possible fashion. He was really good here last time out. And the 2 times he's run over 2.5 miles, he's been pretty good. He won on soft ground a couple of years ago when he won the Marmay. He won it again last year. Probably not as impressive in beating Protectorat as he might have been. But the thing is about Pic D'Orhy is he probably wouldn't want the ground this soft. I'm a huge fan of Pic D'Orhy. This is very much his kind of race, right-handed Ascot. He's won this race before, so he's obviously got this race tailor-made for him, or teed up for him. This is very much his Gold Cup, as it were. There's no way Nichols is going to be thinking about Cheltenham for him, whereas perhaps John Bond might have Ryanair pretensions at the back of his mind. But I think if this comes from a straight dogfight from 2 out, which one of these wants it more? And it'll probably be John Bond. Would I want to pay the ultimate premium 4 to 9 to find out? Probably not. But I do expect pass to prevail here under these conditions because I just don't think Pic D'Orhy will get away from John Bond. I don't think he'll be far enough clear 2 out.
Yeah, we could do with maybe we get in touch with the traders and get a special, Andy, of John Bond to look beaten, to look down on the canvas, and for the hand to come up. It's almost he's almost like a WWF wrestler, isn't he? You know the narrative's not quite over. It's not quite over until he's pinned. Or you could say he reminds me a bit of Novak Djokovic, Barry. You keep writing him off. Oh, surely younger legs, different ground, different track. Something will find him out. But he's such a magnificent athlete that he just keeps going and going. And yeah, he's going to be all eyes on him.
Exactly, and I agree with an awful lot of what Andy says on both horses, and it's going to be an intriguing race. But I suppose John Bond probably has a slight preference for better ground as well. Personally, I had to question the strength of the form of his last win when Elite Tomp bombed out and fell at the second last, and Gidley Park pulled up as well. So he beat Thistle Ask. It was a good performance to battle and get back up. But Thistle Ask was coming from a handicap. It was a good step up for him, but I just would have slight reservations about the strength of that form. And as I don't think John Bond is at his best on soft ground either. So I'm tempted at the price to take him on. Pic D'Orhy, he bombed out last time, having run back 3 weeks after a good run in the Charlie Hall, and 3 mile was probably far enough for him that day. He's won this race the last 2 years, so at the prices, I don't think there's as much between them as the price would suggest. So I probably want to just take on John Bond with Pic D'Orhy, but it's going to be a tricky race.
I think that's a fair enough comment as well to make.
Yeah, a bit of a...
Barry's pointed out there, so Ross interjecting. I do think they're too far apart in the betting. I said I didn't want to take 49 about John Bond. I think that will close in come race time. I think a lot of punters will be looking towards Pic D'Orhy as the value option.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it, Barry? I mean, because again, John Bond, he does. I mean, everyone. You can't help but love him, but the market does veer wildly between this John Bond's a certainty to last time out John Bond's gone at the game to now John Bond's a certainty. It does feel like people can be quite fickle about him, but Pic D'Orhy is going to be interesting because he's obviously the course horse, the race horse. He's going for 3 wins in this race on the bounce. When you're riding a horse like Pickdoy, do you feel extra confidence? Like, this is my race, this is my horse, this is my track. Would that affect how you would approach a race if you were like, this is our day?
Well, you can take it he's going to be trained for the day. Like, Paul Nicholls will have him tuned, as he's done for the last 2 years. So he's going to be revved, and this is his day. He's not worrying about March. So, Harry Cobden will go out with him, and he will ride his race more than likely going forward at this trip. But it's what he does in the last 2 to 3 furlongs. It's what he saves. It's what he has to offer. So does the ground take too much out of him? Does he over race? But I don't think he will over race. He was more relaxed than he has been in the Charlie Hall on his first run this season. So I think I see a lot in his favour. But John Bond stepping up on trip is probably why everyone's getting excited, because this is the trip he's probably at his best at and has looked that way for the last couple of seasons. So it is interesting, but I'm a big believer that I think both horses won't be loving the ground as much as you'd like. So it goes back to, again, I don't think there's as much between them as the price suggests.
Okay, it's going to be an absolutely crackerjack of a race at Ascot then. Sticking with Ascot and looking at the Swinley Handicap Chase, another big field 3 mile staying handicap to get stuck into. And keep your eyes peeled for our epic boosts on the racing front. They'll be available this Saturday from 9 a.m. And we'll have some great offers up our sleeve. So look out for the epic boosts. As for an epic race, we've got 11 runners here with, again, the market being positive about certain yards. And Dan Skelton obviously is having an incredible season, Barry. And it feels like, at the moment, the markets, the punters, when it gets to the weekend, when it gets to those target races, like with a Pied de Nom last weekend, for example, you can almost see the punters lining up their multiples with Deafening Silence over at Haydock and now Joyeux Machin here at Ascot.
Yeah, and he goes down the back of a fall, which I suppose isn't ideal, but I'd agree with you that the market is really latching on to the Skelton horses. The one I liked was Gypcott. It was a good winner last time at Leicester. Has form last season. He was third in a valuable handicap in Windsor on soft ground, so he should cope well with conditions. Obviously, the John Joe Neal horses are coming back into form as well, so he's had a quiet time of it, but he's coming here on the back of a win, which I think is probably more preferable than coming here on the back of a fall. So I like Gypcott on this ground, and the O'Neill team coming back into form.
Yeah, Gypcott, an improving 7-year-old, really put it all together last time out. Similar profile to last year's winner Victorino. But before Victorino, Andy, this was a race for the older, more experienced legs. You've got a good mix of your Gypcotts and your Monregards who've still got more to offer, and your bomb-proof stayers in here. Which side are you going with?
I think the first thing to say about this race, Ross, for a sort of Class 1 handicap worth 56 grand, it probably isn't the strongest, and that's not to disrespect any of the horses in this race. I think you'd normally expect a better quality race. The fact that half the field are out in a handicap, or certainly 5 of them, suggest that. With Sam Brown's rated 154, but with the greatest respect to Sam Brown, he's probably nowhere near that level anymore. 335 is not the horse he was. He's 11 as well. So you're dealing with a lot of horses who are probably on the back 9 of their career, and probably almost putting on the last, or certainly coming up towards the 18th green. So you want younger, fresher legs. Certainly, Gypcott falls into that category. I agree with Barry. I think he's an improving chase. He ran really well in that race, if you recall, Ross, at Ayr. We got a very fast time for that Milcree race, and Gypcott was one of the horses responsible for that strong pace. The form has worked out really well. I put a horse with Mike Collins the other day called Great Pepper, one of Jimmy Moffat's, who only just got nutted back at Ayr over a shorter trip. He ran well. He got beat 20-odd lengths that day. And even young Jack, also Chris Grant, who was only beat 1 home there, he almost nearly won next time out. So that form's really good. And Gypcott himself, of course, franked the form with a win at Leicester. So that time figure that was produced at Ayr has been very reliable. And the good thing about Gypcott as well, he's a front runner. He likes to race up the speed, as you know as well, Ross. I'm sure Barry does as well. Front runners and horses that race prominently in Ascot have a huge advantage. It's very difficult to make the ground from the back of the field. It's a bit like stand down on the flats when horses held up just don't get into it. And it was interesting as well, talking about front runners, that Joyeux Machin was ridden forcefully. Normally he's been held up been given sort of plenty of time to work into his races before, but they tried different tactics with him last time out. First on cheek pieces, and he really responded well. And he was still going extremely well when he misjudged the final ditch, that one on the corner, and he landed a bit steeply and fell. I think he probably would have won that. So he's coming in off the same mark, and if he's in the same form, he could do some damage. So those have been my two get to feel, the two J's, the two prominent racers that still appear as though they're on the upgrade, whereas one or two of these don't. So yeah, Jipcot and Joey Machan, split stakes advice for me there.
All right. I'm just going to throw 300 through 5 at you, Andy, because you were saying about the class angle. I mean, if this is, you've got Sam Brown 154, 300 through 5 and 147, and then it's sub 140 for the rest of them. And, he ran an absolute blinder in this last year. He's £6 lower than that race. He's got some real back class in soft ground as well. And again, Paul Nicholls, some yards have thrived this year. You've seen your Venetia Williams, your Lucinda Russell and Paul Nicholls maybe have had a tougher time, but he does occasionally pop up with one of those Saturdays. And with Pick Doy lining up earlier on, I thought 300 through 5 was a big price.
Yeah, I mean, he won with the first one, the 300 through 5 has come here off the back of modest runs and run well. I think he's yet to be out of frame at Ascot in 3 runs, including a victory in a Grade 3. I think he might have won this race the previous year. So, yeah, he's another one that's dangerous to dismiss, particularly the big price, with the yard absolutely flying.
And don't forget as well, if you place a bet over the course of Friday and Saturday on the racing, you'll get a free bet to use on the horses here at William Hill. Moving over to Wincanton then. Don't forget, we've got price boosts available every day in the UK and Ireland here at William Hill, including across the biggest meetings this weekend. And again, we might be gearing up for the spring festivals, but we've got tons of top racing on Saturday. The Kingwell Hurdle over at Wincanton. Unsurprisingly, a small field, as you tend to get in these 2-mile graded races these days, but at least a new name to throw into the mix potentially, with Alexi likely to be very popular indeed here. Going up against Rubord, again, it could be a Paul Nicholls Saturday. Secret Squirrel and Interlotto make up the numbers. Even though Secret Squirrel is a talented horse, he still has over a stone to find with his main rivals. And Andy, again, look, putting the disappointment of the small field aside, which we're getting used to at the top level over 2 miles over the smaller obstacles, Alexi looked so good at Cheltenham, and he's up in grade here today after getting beaten last time out. Are there reasons for that defeat? And will he be able to put it up to Rubord in his own backyard?
I think so, Ross. It is a shame that we've lost Golden Ace and potentially Potter's Charm as well. I think he might be safe for something like the National Spirit at Fontwell by all accounts. But yeah, the omission of Golden Ace is a real shock. But not a massive surprise. She doesn't really want ground heavy, particularly with 3 or 4 weeks to Cheltenham. And this is the classic case of horses taking advantage of big stars not being at the gig. Alexi and Rubo, with a great suspect, probably aren't good enough to be considered a champion hurdle contender, particularly Rubo. He's very much a right-handed flat track bully, isn't he? But he has run poorly on heavy ground before. He ran in this a couple of years ago, didn't he? Beyond Nemean Lion, and he wasn't so fully effective. He's got a really good record in the elite hurdle, contrastingly, early on in the season when the ground's good. But when it's a real slog, which I'm sure it will be at Wincanton, given the forecast for the weekend, I think he might just come up against it, because Alexis is very good on soft ground, as he proved when he won the big race at Cheltenham early on in the season, that handicap. I suppose it was smidge disappointing at Ascot, you could argue, but I do think Wilful's a very good horse. And, off a mark of 134 that day, John Joe Neal's horse was just really good. Hot Fuzz had done nothing wrong with that form. And neither does the winner when they went on to finish first and second, of course, at Windsor in a valuable pot. So, in hindsight, it probably wasn't as bad as a run as we thought, carrying 12 stone or whatever it was. But I'd imagine he'll stalk Robo here. It's a real easy race to read. And if Rubu does what he tends to do on soft or heavy ground, and that's not quite see it out in the latter stages, then Alexi's superior qualities on the ground and better turn of foot might just be the key components.
All right, and Barry, we sat here last week talking about Brocade racing with Sober Glory over at Newbury. He won by half the track. They've got another very talented hurdler in the shape of Alexi. What are you expecting from him this weekend?
Yeah, definitely a talented hurdler. And I'd agree with a lot of Andy says as regards Rubo, heavy ground. He bombed out behind Nimi Online 2 years ago. And it was a good run for Alexi the last day in Ascot. He was obviously won the Great Wood on soft ground. But he top weight to carry that day. He is only 6. So he's a horse who's still on the up and still open to more improvement. So, for me, he's a lot pointing in his favour. The fact he was going to cope with conditions, but above everything else, he's a horse on the up. So, no, I'd be very sweet on Alexi here. I think Rubo, everything, a lot against him with the ground and being a big concern. So, no, I'd be very sweet on Alexi to get the job done here.
Do you think if he takes this, is he good enough over the next sort of year to 18 months to break into that top hurdling bracket?
Well, maybe he will be, but I don't think he has to be on Saturday to beat Rubo. So if we're just looking in the short term, I think, yeah, he is good enough to win this. He has potential going forward. Whether maybe he'll be jumping the fence in 12 months' time, we don't know. But he's a horse who's on the up and a horse with potential. So just taking Saturday into the equation, I think it'd be hard for me to make a case against them.
All right, okay, that's the Kingwell over at Wincanton. There are plenty of other races across the Irish Series as well at Gorham. We've got some cracking races over there. We've got other graded races and trials as well, which means it's probably a good time to remind you that non-runner money back is live for the Cheltenham Festival. So you can bet safe in the knowledge that if your runner doesn't turn up at Cheltenham in March in the race that you've backed them for, you will get your cash back. So you might see a 3-mile hurdler at Haydock, of course. Again, 3 graded races over at Gore and Barry. Whatever you want. What is there from this weekend? Is there one horse that could put their name on punters' lips for Cheltenham in March?
Yeah, I think Cabral de Matan, he's really stepped up this season. He was a big raw horse last year. Obviously he coped with the ground in second to Secret Squirrel on soft ground at Windsor. But to me, he's a horse who's really on the up. He'd a wind up at the start of the season as well, but he's put in 2 impressive performances. Obviously very good in the rail keel. I don't see a step up to 3 mile being an issue. But Haydock is the right place to do it as well. And he's proven himself on the ground. So I think he's going to be hard to beat. And it could just tee him up, with a crack at the stairs hurdle. It is a quality stairs. It's competitive. But I think this fella is moving towards that direction. So I like Cabral de Matan a lot.
Cabral de Matan, just one of many Skelton Staying hurdlers that they've unleashed this season. What about you, Andy? Same question?
Yeah, I certainly think you want to be taking Barry's advice there with the non-running no bet with Cabral de Matan. I think he's cherry-picked probably the best horse we're going to see over the weekend. The one with the most potential to be a Cheltenham Festival winner. I just think whether it's this year or not, reading between the lines and reading what connections have said in the interviews after his races, it'll be maybe another year further down the line. They might have Aintree at the back of their mind. I think that 2.5 mile race, the intermediate distance, seems to be the route they're going. But it's interesting they're willing to throw the dice, have 3 miles on soft ground at Haydock. Maybe there's been a change of plan in the interim. I don't know. Like I say, I think that non-running no bet is probably the best option because he probably will win Saturday. And then they've got a nice decision to make whether it might be Cheltenham or Aintree. The only one I could come up with as an alternative, just because I think he's a quality horse and he might be a dangerous floater in something like the Brown Advisory or maybe even the National Chase. That's Thomas Moore, who runs in another disappointing turnout in the Rendlesham. Every year this is the same, this Rendlesham. I can't remember the last double figure field we had here. It was like 4 or 5 runners. I suppose the proximity of it to Cheltenham is enough to put 1 or 2 connections off. But Philip Hobbs, Johnson White, they're fully entitled to roll the dice here. That good run beyond Kitzbühel has been advertised, not by the winner, who unfortunately fluffed his lines at Sandown, but by Wendingo, who went on to win next time out. Wendingo's around about a 7-1 shot to win the Brown Advisory, and he beat Wendingo fair and square at Kempton. He's also got good Ascot form. He's 2 from 2 at Ascot, 1 for 1 over fences. He's very likeable. So whether he is Cheltenham bound, I wouldn't know, but I don't think they'll do his claims if they are thinking that way any harm with a win on Saturday, because I think he might just be slightly better than the Jukebox Kid at this stage of his career. And the Jukebox Kid won a very slowly run race last time out. And some of the Ben Pauling horses have gone a bit quiet over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I think Thomas Moore's got plenty in his favour in the Rendlesham.
All right, Thomas Moore then, and Campbell and Mathan possibly for that non-runner money back offer. Okay, let's wrap it up then with our best bets for the weekend. Again, can be in any of the races we talked about or anywhere else that's on offer. Starting off with you, Barry, what's the best bet for you?
Well, I'd move on him shortly because I think he will going to shorten. He's going to shorten for a good bit. Is Alexi. For all the reasons I mentioned, I think this ground he's proven on where Rubo, his main danger, is going to struggle in these conditions. So I think Alexi has a lot in his favour and a horse who's definitely going the right way. So I'd grab the price while you can. He's going to be shorter, I feel. All
right, Alexi it is then. Andy, nap for you?
Yeah, I'm going to look for something a little bit at a bigger price. Lighting Up Our Days is the horse that I'm choosing. Alistair Rad's 7-year-old. Has just had the one run this season. His first one from the thick end of the year at Hereford the other day, but it's a race that was run at a true gallop. And I think the form is very, very good. It's won by Jamie Scott's Came From Nowhere. Good to Be Alive was second. Now, both of those two horses have franked that form in no uncertain terms. Came From Nowhere went on to Ascot and won in a canter. And we had a Sean Bone special, didn't we, at Plumpton the other day with Good to Be Alive, who came from nowhere to end up winning quite comfortably in the end. Those two horses are now rated 132 and 130 respectively. This horse, retrospectively, I think, should have got more than just the £2 that he's got. He's gone from 117 to 119. Considering he only got beat 3 lengths in behind those two horses who've gone on to win in what was a very good race, I think he's got away with daylight robbery. He goes really well right-handed. He loves soft ground. He improved for the step-up in trip. The yard's in good form. He's yet to be out the first 4 in his 9-race career, I think, or 8-race career. So with that run under his belt, with a couple of months off, I think he's going to go very, very close, and he's a nice price. So Lighting Up Our Days should be around about 7 or 8 to 1 on Saturday in that big handicap.
All right. Nice price for the Ralph team. Again, I'm going to stick with 300 through 5. I do think that race is, there's 2 races in one. There's the class horses and those who are sneaking in at the bottom, just chancing their arm. And I think people think the softer the ground, the lighter the weight. But I like class horses. I like horses who've been there and done that. He won it 2 years ago. He was beating a nose in it last year. He's £6 lower. I think he's got one last big swing in him, 300 through 5. So that's the Swinley Handicap Chase at 3 o'clock. The nap for me. Right, that's it. Thanks, guys, and I hope we have a very good weekend. And I hope the sun comes out before I see your face next time out, Barry.
That'd be lovely to think so, Ross. But it's not just coming out yet, anyway.
No. Maybe before Cheltenham, Andy. Fingers crossed.
Hopefully.
It's bound to. I mean, we'll get a change. Yeah, I mean, all this rain's got to go away sooner rather than later. So let's stay positive, eh?
Absolutely. Right. If you haven't done so already, like, subscribe, and tell us what you fancy this weekend down below in the comments.